Margaret was 38 years old, a generous woman with bright eyes and a heart full of warmth. She wasn't thin like the models in glossy magazines. Margaret carried extra weight, but her presence brought comfort to everyone around her. Her laugh could lift the heaviest mood. Her embraces could ease any worry, and her courage could move mountains. She married David when neither of them had anything to their names. David was handsome, intelligent, and ambitious, but opportunity had never knocked on his door. They shared a tiny studio apartment in the bustling city. The metal roof leaked every time it rained. Their sleeping space was cramped. Their storage was just an old wooden trunk, and sometimes they cooked over an open fire in the back when the cooking gas ran out. Yet Margaret never voiced a single complaint. Every evening when David returned home exhausted and discouraged, Margaret would massage his shoulders and speak words of encouragement. "Be patient, my dear. Everything will change. Soon you'll be working in a proper office, wearing professional clothes. You'll have your own vehicle and people will address you with respect." David would manage a tired smile. "I hope so. But look at our situation, Margaret. Look at where we are." Margaret would cup his face in her gentle hands. "Our current situation doesn't define us. What matters is who we are inside. I have complete faith in you. I know you're destined for greatness." They were blessed with 3 children. Sophia, their daughter who was 9 years old, and Marcus, their son who was 6. Daily life was challenging, but Margaret carried the family's burdens like a protector watching over her young. She woke before dawn to prepare breakfast items for sale by the roadside, serving neighbors rushing to their jobs. Sometimes she took cleaning contracts at various buildings. Sometimes she helped others with their laundry. Every cent she earned came straight home. "David, save this money," she would say, placing bills in his palm. "Purchase the newspaper. Keep searching for employment opportunities. Never lose hope." David, though feeling ashamed, always accepted her support. One afternoon, Margaret learned through a customer who bought her breakfast about an opening at a major corporation. She rushed home immediately. "David, put on your nicest shirt. Fix your hair properly. There's an interview taking place this afternoon. You must go and try." David let out a heavy sigh. "Margaret, those companies don't hire people like me. I've tried countless times. I'm exhausted from trying." But Margaret stood her ground firmly. "If you refuse to go, I'll physically take you there myself. Do you want to remain stuck in this studio forever? You have intelligence, David. Let them see what you're capable of." Her passionate words rekindled his motivation. He attended the interview. 15 days later, an official letter arrived. David had secured the position. Margaret celebrated like a young child. She rolled across the floor, clapping enthusiastically, shouting praises. "Thank you, God. My husband has employment." From that moment forward, their circumstances began improving gradually. David now worked in a professional environment, earning a regular monthly income. Margaret continued her breakfast business, but now she expanded by adding beverages and baked goods. Together, they were managing much better financially. As time passed, David advanced in his career. His commitment was exceptional and his abilities became evident. His supervisors were impressed with his performance. Within 6 years, David had progressed from barely surviving to becoming a department head with substantial earnings. They relocated from the studio into a proper apartment with 3 bedrooms. Margaret cried tears of joy as they moved their belongings. She touched the old leaking roof one final time and whispered her gratitude. "Thank you for providing us shelter." David embraced her warmly. "You're an unusual woman, thanking a broken roof." Margaret smiled softly. "I'm a woman who appreciates everything." Their children now attended quality schools. David began purchasing gifts for Margaret, accessories, bags, clothing. He even bought her a modest vehicle. Life felt wonderful, but something else was changing too. David, now wealthy and exposed to different social circles, began viewing the world through different eyes. His colleagues had slim wives who wore makeup, maintained manicured nails, and resembled fashion models. Margaret, with her fuller figure and simple style, didn't fit that image. Initially, his comments were subtle. "Margaret, your stomach has gotten quite large. You should reduce your food intake." "Margaret, look at your arms. They're enormous. You need to exercise." Sometimes he made these remarks as jokes in front of friends. Everyone would laugh. Margaret laughed along, but inside her heart was breaking. One evening, she wore a new burgundy dress she had made for church services. She stood before him, smiling shyly. "How do I look, my dear?" David glanced up and made a dismissive sound. You look like a sack of grain wrapped with ribbon. Why do you spend money making dresses instead of losing weight? His words cut through her like a blade. She went to their bedroom, sat on the bed, and wept quietly. She remembered the days when she supported David financially, feeding him, paying his transportation to interviews, even selling her jewelry to buy him proper shoes. Now the man she had sacrificed everything for was ridiculing her appearance, but she remained silent. She didn't want their children witnessing arguments between them. At night when David slept, Margaret often turned her face toward the wall and allowed tears to fall. She prayed silently. God, I love this man deeply. I supported him when he had absolutely nothing. I respected him when nobody else did. Now that he's successful, he insults me. Father, please help me. Don't allow our marriage to fall apart. She considered dieting, but stress made her eat more. She thought about joining a gym, but time and finances didn't permit. Still, she tried her best. However, regardless of her efforts, David's words became increasingly harsh. He would arrive home smelling of unfamiliar perfume. He stayed later at work. Sometimes he ignored her phone calls. Mother, why is father always angry with you? Sophia asked one evening. Margaret forced a smile. Don't worry, my daughter. Father is just stressed from work. But deep inside, her heart was shattering into pieces. One Saturday morning, Margaret woke early and prepared David's favorite meal, yam with egg sauce. She dressed the children nicely and they all waited for him in the living room. When he finally emerged from the bedroom looking sharp in a new shirt, Margaret smiled warmly. Darling, please sit down. We want to eat together as a family today. David frowned deeply. Margaret, look at yourself. You're already sweating this early in the morning. Always sweating. You disgust me. Her hands trembled. The children froze in shock. Marcus whispered, Mother, please don't cry. But Margaret's tears fell before she could control them. David was no longer the man Margaret had married. He used to rush home to her smile, to her cooking, to her laughter. But now he returned home late every night smelling of alcohol and strange perfume. Margaret tried to pretend she didn't notice initially. She told herself it was work-related. It was stress-related. But deep inside, her heart knew the truth and was terrified. One night when he walked in extremely late, she gently asked, David, why are you coming home so late these days? The children wait for you. They ask about you constantly. David slammed his car keys on the table with a loud crash. His eyes turned red with anger. Margaret, must you constantly nag me? Is it your concern when I come home? Look at yourself. Overweight, sweaty, smelling of cooking oil. You disgust me. Don't ever question me again. His words stabbed her heart like a knife. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She turned away so the children wouldn't see her crying, but they witnessed everything. Sophia clutched her mother's clothing tightly, whispering, Mother, I'm sorry. Please don't cry. David was now involved with another woman. Her name was Victoria, a stunning, slender woman who loved wearing form-fitting dresses and bright red lipstick. She didn't care about Margaret. She didn't care about the children. She only cared about herself and David. Whenever David visited her, Victoria would smile, touch his chest, and say softly, You know I love you, David. Why are you still keeping that overweight woman in your house? She doesn't suit you. You're an important man now. You need a woman like me beside you. David laughed, sipping his drink. Don't worry, darling. I'll remove her soon. It's just the children I'm considering. Victoria rolled her eyes. Children adapt. Be quick about it, David. I don't want to continue sharing you with that overweight woman. You deserve better, and I am better. David nodded. Don't worry. Soon. Very soon. Back at their home, Margaret waited every night, her heart breaking progressively. She cooked his favorite meals, but David no longer touched them. She wore her best clothing, but David no longer looked at her. One night she gathered her courage and said, David, is there another woman involved? Please, if there is, tell me honestly. David's face twisted with anger. Are you insane? Who do you think you are to question me? Look at your overweight body, your unattractive arms. Do you think any man wants a woman like you? I'm actually ashamed of you. Be grateful I still allow you to stay in my house. Margaret broke down sobbing loudly. David, after everything I did for you, after all my sacrifices, I supported this family when you had nothing. I believed in you when society mocked you. And this is how you repay me? But David only made a dismissive sound, grabbed his car keys and stormed out again. The children were not too young to understand. Sophia asked her mother, "Mother, why doesn't father love you anymore? Why does he always leave and return angry?" Margaret hugged her tightly, hiding her tears. "Don't worry, my daughter. Father is just busy with work. One day things will improve." But deep in her heart, she was falling apart. Every insult David gave her replayed constantly in her mind. Every laugh he shared with Victoria stabbed her soul. At night, she prayed desperately. "God, I'm not requesting wealth. I'm not requesting beauty. I'm only requesting love and peace in my home. Why is David treating me this way?" One afternoon, Margaret saw Victoria for the first time. David had dropped her near their street, forgetting that Margaret was returning from the market at the same time. Victoria looked at Margaret with a sly smile. "So you're the wife? Now I understand why David is ashamed of you. Look at yourself, overweight, aged, dull. Do you think you can keep a man like him? Wake up, madam. David belongs to me now." Margaret's shopping basket nearly fell from her hand. Tears burned her eyes. But she said nothing. She simply walked away slowly, her heart heavy as stone. That night, when David returned, Margaret pleaded with him. "David, please don't destroy this home. The children need you. I need you. Don't let that woman ruin what we built together." But David shouted, "Be quiet, Margaret. Don't ever mention her name again. If not for the children, I would have thrown you out already. You're a disgrace to me. You're too overweight, too aged, too unsophisticated. I regret ever marrying you." Margaret collapsed to the floor, crying bitterly. Her chest hurt as if someone had stabbed her. Days turned into weeks. David now spent more time at Victoria's house than his own. He bought her expensive wigs, perfumes, and dresses. He took her to restaurants, hotels, and even business functions, introducing her as a close friend. At home, Margaret suffered. The children noticed there was less money for food, because David spent most of it on Victoria. Margaret returned to preparing breakfast items for sale to ensure Sophia and Marcus had something to eat. Neighbors began gossiping. "Look at Margaret. Her husband is wealthy, but she's selling breakfast again. That man has another woman, that's why." Their whispers broke Margaret's heart even more, but she kept pushing forward for her children. She refused to give up. One evening, Victoria sat with David in her living room, resting her head on his shoulder. "David, you know I love you, but I'm tired of waiting. Remove that overweight woman. Divorce her. She doesn't deserve you." David kissed her forehead. "I will, darling. Don't worry, soon, very soon." Victoria pouted. "You better be quick. I can't keep sharing you. You belong to me and me alone." David nodded, but his heart felt restless. That night, Margaret sat alone in the living room. The children were asleep. She looked at their wedding photograph on the wall. David smiling, holding her tightly. That smile was gone now. That love was gone now. She whispered to herself, "So this is how love dies. So this is how a woman who gave everything becomes nothing. God, why me?" Tears rolled down her cheeks as she embraced herself. And in that quiet night, Margaret understood something profound. Her life would never remain the same again. Days passed and Margaret's sadness grew deeper. David no longer looked at her like his wife. He mocked her for her size, ignored her tears, and spent most nights at Victoria's place. She barely slept anymore. Many nights she sat by the window staring at the quiet sky, whispering prayers that seemed to bounce back in silence. Her heart was breaking slowly. One morning, after another sleepless night waiting for David, Margaret finally decided she couldn't remain quiet anymore. She wiped her face, dressed up neatly, and took a bus to see David's older brother, Jonathan. Jonathan was a kind man, simple, honest, and respected by everyone. When Margaret arrived, her eyes were swollen from crying. "Margaret, what happened?" he asked softly, noticing her pain. She broke down immediately, falling on her knees before him. "Brother Jonathan, please talk to your brother for me. David no longer cares for me or the children. He insults me daily, calls me overweight, says I disgust him. He now has another woman. Please help me before I lose my home." Jonathan sighed deeply and shook his head. "Margaret, stop crying. You're a good woman. I know what you did for David when he had nothing. Don't worry. I'll talk to him." Margaret looked up, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you, brother. I don't want to lose my marriage. I just want peace." Jonathan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Go home. I'll handle it." The next day, Jonathan decided to surprise his younger brother at work. David was sitting in his large office wearing a fine suit, scrolling through his phone when his secretary entered. "Sir, your brother, Mr. Jonathan, is here to see you." David looked up quickly. "My brother? Let him in." Jonathan walked in slowly, his face serious and calm, but his eyes were firm. David stood up, smiling awkwardly. "Brother, you didn't tell me you were coming. What a surprise." But Jonathan didn't smile back. He looked straight at him and said, "David, sit down." David frowned slightly but obeyed. "Brother, what's wrong?" Jonathan placed both hands on the desk and stared at him. "You are what's wrong, David. Have you forgotten how you started? Have you forgotten the woman who built you up when you had nothing? The woman who sold breakfast to feed you and your children? Wasn't she overweight when you married her? Now because you have money, you call her overweight? You insult her. You cheat on her." David tried to speak. "Brother, please don't believe everything she—" But Jonathan slammed the desk. "Keep quiet. When you were broke, you didn't notice she was overweight. When you were hungry, her food was delicious to you. When you had no job, she stood by you. Now that you're wealthy, she's suddenly not good enough. You're a disgrace, David." David looked down ashamed, but pride filled his heart. Jonathan continued, "You have abandoned your family for another woman who doesn't even care about you. I'm ashamed of you, David, very ashamed." Jonathan grabbed his car keys and stood up. "If you keep walking this road, you will lose everything that truly matters." Without another word, he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. David sat there sweating, his jaw tight with anger. Not at himself, but at Margaret. That evening, when David returned home, he was breathing fire. He opened the door so hard that the children ran in fear. "Margaret!" he shouted. Margaret came out quietly from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her clothing. "Yes, David," he pointed at her angrily. "So you went to report me to my brother. You want to make me look like a fool? You want to destroy my name?" Margaret's heart pounded. "David, I only wanted him to talk to you. I didn't mean any harm." "You don't listen to me anymore." Before she could finish, he slapped her hard across the face. "You shameless woman. You want to embarrass me? You overweight fool." He screamed, hitting her again. The children screamed. "Father, stop. Father, stop hurting Mother." But David pushed Margaret to the floor. "Get out of my house." Tears streamed down Margaret's face as she crawled up, holding her cheek. "David, please don't do this in front of the children, please." But David was too angry to listen. "Leave now. I don't ever want to see your face again." He grabbed her small bag, threw it outside, and dragged her toward the door. Sophia ran after her mother, crying, "Mother, don't go." Marcus held her clothing tightly, sobbing, "Mother, please don't leave us." Margaret knelt and hugged them tightly, tears falling freely. "My babies, I love you. Don't cry. I will come for you. I promise," David shouted. "Children, come inside now." But they refused to move. They stood outside crying as their mother picked up her small bag and walked away barefoot and broken. Margaret walked a long distance before reaching the gate of her old friend Rebecca. She knocked weakly, her eyes swollen and red. When Rebecca opened the door and saw her, she gasped, "Jesus." "Margaret, what happened to you?" Margaret broke down, crying loudly. "He beat me. He threw me out. David said I should leave his house." Rebecca quickly pulled her inside and hugged her tightly. "Shh, stop crying. You'll be fine, my sister. Don't cry again." She helped Margaret sit down, brought her water, and wiped her tears. "You can stay here as long as you want. Forget that man. He doesn't deserve you." But Margaret shook her head sadly. "Rebecca, it hurts. I gave him everything. I built him. I suffered with him. And now he treats me like trash." Rebecca held her hands. "Listen to me, Margaret. Sometimes pain opens the door for something better. You will rise again. Just be strong." Margaret looked up at her friend, eyes full of sorrow. "How can I be strong when my children are not with me?" Rebecca's heart broke. "We'll find a way, my sister. Don't lose hope." While Margaret was crying at her friend's house, David wasted no time. That same week, he brought Victoria into the home. The neighbors were shocked. This man didn't even wait. He replaced his wife like she never existed. Victoria came in with her fancy dresses, loud perfume, and pride. She sat on Margaret's chair, used her kitchen, and even slept on her bed. When the children came home from school and saw her, Sophia frowned. "Who are you?" Victoria smiled wickedly. "I am your father's new woman." "Go and take your bath," Marcus shouted. "You are not our mother. Our mother is Margaret." David raised his voice. "Enough! You will respect her." "She is your new mother now." The children began to cry. Sophia held Marcus's hand and ran to their room, sobbing. "We want Mother. We want Mother." David ignored them, pretending not to hear. Victoria laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Let them cry, darling," she whispered. "They'll get used to me soon. Forget that overweight woman. She's gone for good." David nodded silently, but deep inside, a small shadow of guilt crept into his heart. That night, as David lay beside Victoria, he turned to the wall and sighed heavily. Far away, Margaret sat by Rebecca's window, looking at the moon through her tears. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "God, if you can hear me, please don't let my children forget me." Days turned to weeks, and Margaret stayed with her friend Rebecca. Though Rebecca treated her with love, Margaret's heart was never at peace. Every night she cried quietly, thinking about her children. She wondered if they had eaten, if they were sleeping well, if they missed her as much as she missed them. Sometimes Rebecca would wake up and find Margaret sitting by the window, staring into the dark sky. "Margaret," she would whisper softly, "come and sleep. Crying won't solve it." Margaret would shake her head slowly, tears running down her face. "Rebecca, my heart aches. My children, my babies, they need me. I can't even hug them. I can't kiss them goodnight." Rebecca sat beside her and held her hands. "I know, my sister, but one day God will fight for you. Just wait and see." Margaret nodded weakly. "I hope so, because right now I feel like I have nothing left." Meanwhile, in David's house, everything had changed. The once warm, happy home had turned into a cold, silent place. Victoria moved around like a queen. She changed the curtains, removed Margaret's pictures from the wall, and even threw away some of her things. She would look at David and smile. "Now this house looks like mine." David laughed and said, "You can do whatever you like, darling. This is your home now." But deep inside, he didn't feel the peace he expected. The laughter in the house was gone. The children rarely smiled. Sophia had stopped eating well, and Marcus cried every night asking for his mother. Sometimes when David sat at the dining table, he could still hear Margaret's voice in his head, her laughter, her gentle "Darling, your food is ready." But when he looked up, it was Victoria standing there wearing short dresses and rolling her eyes if he didn't smile. "David," she said one night, "you think too much these days. Are you missing that woman?" David frowned. "What kind of question is that?" Victoria smirked. "I'm just asking. You better forget her. I don't want her name mentioned here again." David looked at her and said nothing, but that night he couldn't sleep. The children were the ones who suffered the most. Sophia would wake up crying in the middle of the night. "Father, where is Mother? I want Mother." David would sigh and say, "Go back to sleep. Mother is fine." But Victoria didn't like it. "David, you better control those kids. I don't want to hear that woman's name in this house again. I'm not their nanny." David shouted at the children, "Enough. Don't ever mention your mother again." From that day, Sophia and Marcus stopped talking much. They became quiet and sad. Sometimes they whispered to each other at night, holding hands. One evening, Marcus said softly, "Sister, do you think Mother will come back?" Sophia nodded, wiping her tears. "She will. Mother never breaks her promise." One afternoon, Rebecca brought food to the table. "Margaret, eat something. You've been crying since morning." Margaret looked down at the food and whispered, "I'm not hungry." Rebecca sighed. "Margaret, you have to stop punishing yourself. That man doesn't deserve your tears. You are beautiful, strong, and kind. Don't let his words kill your spirit." Margaret smiled weakly. "Rebecca, I just want my children. That's all that matters to me." Rebecca's eyes softened. She held Margaret's hands and said, "You will have them back one day, my sister. No storm lasts forever. Just keep praying and stay strong. Your children will smile in your arms again." Not long after, David began to notice that Victoria wasn't the angel he thought she was. She complained about everything. "David," she said one morning, "why is this house so boring? Why don't you take me on trips like other wealthy men do?" David frowned. "Victoria, I'm busy. I have meetings and projects to handle." She rolled her eyes. "Busy, busy, busy. When you were chasing me, you weren't too busy." Sometimes she would insult him if he didn't give her money. "Is it not me that makes you look good? Without me, you're just an old man." David was shocked. No woman had ever talked to him like that before. At night, when he lay in bed, he thought of Margaret again. Her patience, her quiet strength, her kindness. She never raised her voice even when she was hurt. But pride wouldn't let him admit it out loud. One Saturday when Victoria went out shopping, Sophia sneaked out of the house with Marcus. They took a taxi and went straight to Rebecca's place. When Margaret opened the door and saw them, she screamed in shock, "My babies!" The children ran into her arms, crying, "Mother!" "We missed you." Margaret fell to her knees, hugging them tightly, kissing their faces over and over again. Tears rolled down her cheeks like rain. "My babies! Oh, my babies, I missed you too." Rebecca came out from the kitchen and gasped, "Jesus, how did they come here?" "Father's girlfriend went out," Sophia said softly. "We just wanted to see Mother." Margaret looked at them sadly. "Does your father know you came?" Marcus shook his head. "No, Mother, please don't tell him. He will beat us." Margaret hugged them again. "Don't worry. You'll be safe today." But deep inside, she knew this visit would cause trouble once David found out. When Victoria came back home that evening and didn't see the children, she frowned and shouted, "David, where are those brats of yours?" David looked around, confused. "They were playing in their room a few minutes ago." "They are gone," Victoria yelled. "You better go and find them before people start gossiping that I chased them away." David stood up in shock. "Where could they have gone?" Victoria folded her arms and hissed, "Maybe that overweight wife of yours came and took them. Who else would want those crying kids?" David's heart jumped. "You're right. She must be with her friend. That's the only place she would go." He grabbed his car keys and rushed out in anger. When he arrived at Rebecca's house, he pushed the door open and saw Margaret on her knees, hugging Sophia and Marcus tightly. The children were crying, holding their mother's neck. David's face changed instantly. "So this is where you hide them. Margaret, you came here to steal my children," he shouted. Margaret quickly stood up, wiping her tears. "David, please stop shouting. I didn't take them. They came on their own." "They missed me," David pointed at her angrily. "Liar, you think I don't know your tricks? You want to destroy my home again?" Before Margaret could speak, little Sophia stepped forward, her eyes full of tears. "Father, she's not lying. We came on our own. I know this place. Mother used to bring us here to visit Aunt Rebecca." David froze for a moment, staring at his daughter. His anger slowly turned into guilt, but pride wouldn't let him admit it. Margaret held the children close and said firmly, "David, they are our children, not just yours. I won't let you separate me from them again." David's voice shook with anger. "You have no right to talk to me like that." Rebecca quickly stepped in front of Margaret. "David, that's enough. Can't you see what your pride is doing? These children need their mother." David glared at her. "Stay out of this, Rebecca. This is between me and my wife." Margaret looked at him with tears in her eyes. "David, you still call me your wife after all the pain, the insults, and throwing me out like a stranger?" David looked away, his heart trembling. He saw his children clinging to their mother and crying, and something deep inside him began to melt, but pride kept his lips sealed. Without saying another word, he turned and walked out, slamming the door. That night, Margaret held her children close as they slept. She kissed their foreheads and whispered, "No matter what happens, I'll always fight for you." Outside, the wind blew softly, as if heaven itself was listening to her cry. Margaret's heart was still heavy, but having her children beside her gave her new strength. Every morning she woke up early, prepared them for school, and prayed silently for a better tomorrow. Rebecca helped her with food and small money whenever she could. Together, they planned how to rebuild their lives. One bright Monday morning, Rebecca came home with excitement written all over her face. She waved a paper in the air and shouted, "Margaret, guess what? My company is hiring a secretary. I told my boss about you and he said you should come tomorrow for an interview." Margaret gasped. "Me? Are you serious?" Rebecca nodded, smiling. "Yes, my dear. You are educated, responsible, and hardworking. I know you can do it. Just go and show them who you are." Tears filled Margaret's eyes as she hugged Rebecca tightly. "Rebecca, you are more than a friend to me. You're my sister. God will bless you for helping me when everyone else turned their back." The next day, Margaret woke up early and got ready for her interview. She wore a simple but neat gown, brushed her hair, held her bag, and said a short prayer before leaving the house. When she arrived, her heart was beating fast, but she stayed calm. The manager asked her a few questions, and after watching her confidence and the way she spoke, he smiled and said, "You look like someone who knows her work. Can you start tomorrow?" Margaret's face lit up. "Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir." That evening, she came back home dancing with joy. She hugged her children tightly and shouted, "My babies, guess what? Mother got a job." The kids jumped and clapped their hands. "Yay, Mother got a job." Margaret laughed and cried at the same time. For the first time since her husband threw her out, she felt hope again. She looked at her children and said softly, "From today, no one will ever hurt us again. I'll work hard and protect you with my life." Marcus smiled proudly. "Mother, you're the strongest woman in the world." Margaret hugged them tight. "And you two are the reason I'll never give up." Meanwhile, David's world was slowly falling apart, even though he didn't realize it at first. At home, Victoria had changed completely. She no longer treated him like a king. She spent his money carelessly and shouted at him over everything. "David," she said one morning, "I'm tired of this house. Buy me a new car." David sighed. "But Victoria, I just bought you one last month," she hissed. "That one is small. I want a Jeep. You have money. Stop pretending." Whenever he tried to talk to her gently, she would snap back. "Don't raise your voice at me. I'm not your overweight wife that you used to control. Try it and I'll walk out of this house." David was shocked. No woman had ever spoken to him like that. He began to wonder what he had gotten himself into. Even at work, he was no longer focused. His performance dropped. His boss noticed and called him aside. "David," he said, "you need to pull yourself together. Don't let personal problems destroy your career." David nodded quietly, but his heart was full of pain. At night, while lying beside Victoria, he often turned his face to the wall, remembering Margaret, her gentle voice, her laughter, and how she used to bring him food with a smile and say, "Darling, please eat before it gets cold." He sighed deeply. "I didn't know peace until I lost it." One Friday evening, David came home earlier than usual. He wanted to surprise Victoria, maybe show her love again and fix their relationship. But the moment he opened the door, he heard laughter, a man's voice. He froze. Slowly, he walked toward the living room, and what he saw made his heart stop. Victoria was sitting on the couch wearing a short nightdress, laughing and holding another man's hand as they drank wine. "Victoria!" David shouted. She turned in shock, then frowned. "Oh, you're back early," David's voice shook. "Who is this man in my house sitting on my chair?" The man stood up nervously. "Bro, calm down. Don't call me bro," David roared. "What are you doing in my house?" Victoria rolled her eyes. "Stop shouting, David. He's just a friend." "Just a friend drinking wine with you in my living room while you're half-dressed?" She dropped her glass. "David, don't start drama." "You're always shouting. I just needed company." David's body trembled. "Victoria, after everything I gave you, my home, my peace, my money, you bring a man into my house?" Victoria smirked. "Your house? Please don't act like a saint. You threw your overweight wife out and ran to me, remember? Now you're crying because I'm doing to you exactly what you did to her." The words hit David like thunder. His chest tightened. Tears filled his eyes. Without another word, he turned around and walked out, slamming the door behind him. David got into his car and drove into the night. His mind was blank, his heart heavy with regret. He could still hear Victoria's cruel words echoing in his head. "You threw your overweight wife out. Now you're crying." He saw Margaret's face clearly. Her smile, her kindness, her love. A tear rolled down his cheek. "What have I done?" he whispered. He pressed harder on the accelerator. Rain began to fall. The road was slippery. Then suddenly a huge truck appeared out of nowhere. David tried to swerve, but it was too late. The sound of metal tearing filled the air. The car spun and slammed into a pole. Glass shattered everywhere. Then everything went silent. Everything went dark. News of the accident spread quickly. When Jonathan, David's older brother, heard what happened, he dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. His heart was beating fast as he prayed silently. "Oh God, please don't let my brother die. Please give him another chance." When he reached the hospital, he ran straight to the reception. "Good afternoon, nurse. My name is Jonathan. My younger brother, David Bennett, was brought here after an accident. Please, where is he?" The nurse looked up from her desk. "Room 214, sir. But the doctor is there right now." Jonathan didn't wait another second. He hurried down the long white corridor, his shoes echoing on the floor. His heart felt heavy, his hands shaking. When he entered the ward, he stopped at the door, staring at the sight before him. David was lying on the hospital bed, his head wrapped in bandages, both legs covered with white plaster. Machines beeped softly beside him. He looked weak, pale, and broken. Nothing like the proud, strong man Jonathan once knew. Jonathan swallowed hard and whispered, "Oh, my brother, what have you done to yourself?" The doctor turned around and greeted him politely. "Good afternoon, sir. Are you the patient's relative?" Jonathan nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm his older brother. Please, how is he?" The doctor sighed. "He is very lucky to be alive. The accident was serious. His 2 legs were badly injured, especially the left one. We did everything we could. With time, therapy, and proper care, he will be able to walk again, but not soon." Jonathan frowned in worry. "Doctor, what do you mean?" The doctor replied gently. "For now, he won't be able to walk. He will have to use a wheelchair until his legs heal enough for therapy. It may take months." Jonathan stood still for a moment, speechless. His eyes filled with tears. "Oh God, my brother." The doctor patted his shoulder softly. "Be thankful he survived. It could have been worse. God gave him a second chance." Jonathan nodded slowly, his heart heavy. He looked again at his brother lying helplessly on the bed. The strong man who once laughed so loud, mocked his wife, and lived like a king, now couldn't move his legs. After talking to the doctor, Jonathan stepped out of the room and leaned on the wall, his eyes red. Memories of the last time he spoke to David flooded his mind. The anger, the warning, the shame. He remembered shouting, "You will lose everything that truly matters if you don't change." Now looking at his brother's condition, he felt both pain and pity. He whispered quietly, "I told you, David, but you didn't listen." He wiped his face and walked back into the ward. The doctor had finished his rounds and left. The room was quiet except for the sound of the machines beside the bed. Jonathan pulled the chair and sat beside David, watching him breathe. He sat there for a few minutes, praying silently until he saw David's fingers twitch. "Doctor," he called out softly. But before the doctor came back, David's eyes began to open slowly. Jonathan leaned closer. David, can you hear me?" David blinked weakly and tried to speak, but his voice was faint. "Brother?" Jonathan's eyes widened with relief. "Thank you, Jesus, you're awake." David looked confused. Where am I?" "You're in the hospital," Jonathan said gently. "You had an accident, but you're alive." David frowned slightly. "My legs, I can't feel my legs." Jonathan hesitated, then said softly, "The doctor said they were badly injured. But don't worry. With therapy and care, you'll walk again. For now, you'll have to use a wheelchair." David's eyes filled with tears. "A wheelchair?" he whispered. No, it can't be." Jonathan held his hand firmly. "Calm down, David. You're still alive. That's what matters." But David turned his face away, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. In that moment, the proud man who once laughed at others' pain began to taste his own. Jonathan looked at him and sighed deeply. "Maybe this is God's way of teaching you something, my brother." He sat quietly beside him as David lay there, staring at the ceiling, broken both in body and spirit. Outside the hospital, the rain began to fall again, soft, steady, and cold, like heaven itself was washing away pride from the earth. After 4 long weeks in the hospital, David was finally discharged. His body was weak, his legs wrapped with bandages, and his heart full of shame. Jonathan came that morning to help him return home. The nurse rolled his wheelchair to the gate, and Jonathan slowly helped him into the car. David winced in pain as his brother lifted him carefully. "Take it easy, brother," Jonathan said softly. David nodded weakly, his eyes wet. "Thank you, brother, for not abandoning me." Jonathan sighed. "You're my blood, David, but I pray this experience teaches you something." The ride home was quiet. David stared out the window, watching the world move. People walking freely, children playing, cars speeding by. All things he couldn't do anymore. Tears rolled silently down his cheeks. When they got to the house, Jonathan parked and walked around to help his brother out. Victoria was inside, sitting at her dressing table, painting her nails and humming to music. Jonathan carried David gently and placed him in his wheelchair. David looked around the living room. Everything still smelled like Victoria's perfume, but the warmth that once filled the house was gone. "Victoria," Jonathan called out. "He's back home." Victoria didn't answer immediately. She took her time finishing her makeup before walking lazily into the living room. Her eyes met David's and she frowned slightly. "Oh, you're back." David looked down. "Yes, the doctor said I'll be using this wheelchair for some time." Victoria crossed her arms. "That's your business." Jonathan stared at her in disbelief. "That's all you have to say?" She shrugged. "What else should I say? Welcome." Jonathan clenched his fists but tried to stay calm. I helped bring him home. He'll need care, someone to cook for him, give him his medication, and help him move around. Victoria rolled her eyes. And why are you telling me? Jonathan frowned. Because you're the woman living with him. Isn't that obvious? Victoria laughed mockingly. Wait, are you trying to leave this man here for me to take care of? Do I look like his wife to you? You must be joking. Jonathan's face hardened. Victoria, is he not your man? You're the reason his wife left. You told him to throw her out. Now you want to abandon him when he needs you most? Victoria hissed loudly. Did I force him to throw his wife out? No, that was his choice. He invited me to stay, but he didn't marry me. So don't expect me to turn into a nurse or maid for your brother. Jonathan's anger burned. You wicked woman. You destroyed his home and now you talk like this. Victoria folded her arms calmly. Look, if you still love your brother, you better employ someone to take care of him because I'm not doing it. Jonathan looked at David, who sat silently in his wheelchair, tears gathering in his eyes. You see, David? You see who you threw your wife away for? The woman you called queen is showing you her true colors now. David lowered his head in shame. Brother, I have no words. Jonathan shook his head sadly. I warned you, but pride blinded you. I'll come to check on you later, but remember, this is the fruit of your actions. He picked up his car keys and walked to the door. Victoria called out behind him. Please close the door when you leave. Jonathan stopped for a second, turned around, and gave her a cold look. You'll answer to God for your cruelty. Then he left. That evening, the house was quiet. David sat alone in his wheelchair, staring at the ceiling. His legs hurt, but what hurt more was the emptiness inside his chest. He called out softly, Victoria! Victoria, please come. No answer. He tried again, louder. Victoria. After some seconds, Victoria shouted back from the bedroom. What is it again? Can't you let someone rest? David sighed. Please help me. I need to take my medication. I'm hungry. Victoria stormed out angrily. David, how many times must I tell you? I am not your maid or nurse. You better find someone to do all these things for you. David looked at her helplessly. Victoria, please just help me make a small meal so I can take my medicine. Victoria folded her arms. David, I need money. I want to fix my hair and buy some things. David swallowed hard. Victoria, I don't have money now. The accident cost me everything I had. My savings are gone. Victoria laughed wickedly. Then there's no reason for me to be here. You can't provide for me anymore, so what am I doing here? David's voice broke. Victoria, don't say that. You can't leave me like this, but Victoria was already walking away. She opened the wardrobe and began packing her clothes into a large bag. David's eyes widened. Victoria, please don't do this. I need you, she turned sharply. Need me? You should have thought of that before you threw your wife out. I'm not your wife. I don't owe you anything. David reached out helplessly. Victoria, please. She ignored him, zipped up her bag, and walked out without looking back. The door slammed hard and silence filled the house again. David sat there motionless, staring into space. The truth hit him like thunder. He had lost everything. His wife, his children, his peace, and now the woman he thought loved him. Tears poured down his face as he whispered, Oh God, what have I done to myself? The next day, Jonathan came to check on him. When he entered the house and didn't see Victoria, he frowned. Where is that woman? David looked up slowly, his eyes red from crying. She left. Jonathan's face darkened. She left you just like that? David nodded weakly. She said she's not my maid. She can't take care of me. Jonathan sighed deeply. I don't blame her. I blame you. I warned you, David. You chased away the only woman who truly loved you. The woman who suffered with you when you had nothing. Now see who you chose instead. You threw away gold for dust. David covered his face and began to cry. Brother, you are right. I have realized my mistake. Every night I see Margaret's face in my dreams. I hear her crying. I see our children calling me. I feel so empty. Jonathan placed a hand on his shoulder. You see, brother, pride is a dangerous thing. You mocked your wife for being overweight, but that same woman carried your pain, your shame, and your hunger for years. She was your helper, your gift from God. David wept louder. Brother, I have destroyed my life with my own hands. Please, please help me. Take me to Margaret. Let me beg her for forgiveness. Even if she refuses to come back, let me tell her I am sorry. Jonathan nodded slowly. It won't be easy, but I'll talk to her. I'll tell her what has happened. I just hope it's not too late. David wiped his tears. I don't care if she doesn't want me again. I just want her to forgive me. I can't sleep at night knowing how much I hurt her." Jonathan sighed sadly, looking at his broken brother sitting helplessly in a wheelchair. "I warned you, David, but maybe this pain will teach you to value true love," David whispered softly. "I lost everything, brother, but if I can see Margaret one more time, maybe I'll find peace." Jonathan placed his hand on his shoulder again. "Rest now. I'll go and find her." David nodded, crying silently as Jonathan stood up and walked toward the door. When Jonathan stepped outside, he looked up at the sky and whispered, "God, touch Margaret's heart. Let her forgive him. He has learned his lesson." 3 days later, Jonathan went to see Margaret. She was at her new job as a secretary, arranging files in her office when he walked in quietly. When she turned and saw him, she froze in surprise. "Brother Jonathan," she said softly. "What are you doing here?" Jonathan smiled sadly. "Margaret, can we talk?" She quickly finished typing a letter, closed the file, and nodded. "Yes, sir." They sat on a small bench outside the building. Jonathan looked into her tired but peaceful face and sighed deeply. "Margaret," he began, "I know my brother hurt you badly. He insulted you, mocked you, and abandoned you when you needed him most. But God has dealt with him in his own way." Margaret looked worried. "What happened?" Jonathan's voice softened. "David had a terrible accident. Both of his legs were badly injured. He can't walk for now. He's in a wheelchair," Margaret gasped. "Jesus, my God." Her eyes filled with tears. "Is he alive?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "Yes, but he's broken. Not only in body, but in spirit. Victoria left him the moment she realized he couldn't provide for her anymore. He's all alone now. He asked me to beg you to forgive him." Margaret wiped her tears quietly. "Brother Jonathan, I suffered. That man made me feel like I wasn't human. He threw me away like trash. My children cried every night. I cried too. The pain was too much." Jonathan held her hand gently. "I know, my sister, but you've always had a soft heart. Don't let bitterness take over. Forgive him, even if you don't go back. Forgiveness will give you peace." Margaret looked down for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. I can't carry anger forever. I'll forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I want peace in my heart." Jonathan smiled softly. "God bless you, Margaret. You don't know how proud I am of you." She wiped her eyes and whispered, "Please take me to him. Let me see him." Later that evening, Jonathan drove Margaret to David's house. David was sitting in his wheelchair by the window, staring into space when he heard the door open. He turned slowly and his heart nearly stopped. "Margaret," he whispered. She stood there wearing a simple gown, her eyes full of tears. For a long moment, both of them just stared at each other in silence. David's lips trembled. "You came?" Margaret nodded softly. "Yes, I came." He wiped his eyes quickly. "Margaret, I don't deserve to look at you. I wronged you in every way. I mocked your body. I insulted your love. I threw you out like you were nothing. I thought I was wise, but I was blind. I lost everything because of pride." He broke down crying helplessly. "Please forgive me, Margaret. I beg you in God's name. I can't sleep at night. I see your face and the faces of our children. Please forgive me." Margaret's tears fell as she knelt beside him. "David, I forgave you even before I came here. I just asked God to give me strength to say it. I've carried that pain too long." David covered his face and wept. "I don't deserve your kindness. You are gold, Margaret. I threw away gold and picked sand." She touched his hand gently. "You didn't throw away gold. You just didn't recognize its value until it was too late." Jonathan, standing by the door, wiped his own tears quietly. He had never seen such a powerful moment. David whispered, "Will you ever come back home?" Margaret smiled sadly. "David, what you need now is healing. Let's take things one step at a time. I'll be here to help you walk again. Not because I owe you, but because I still care." David nodded, sobbing softly. "Even hearing that gives me hope." Margaret smiled faintly. "The children miss you. When you get stronger, they'll come see you." David smiled through his tears. "Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself." Jonathan placed a hand on both of them. "This is what love and forgiveness look like. God has restored what pride destroyed." Weeks passed and Margaret kept her promise. She visited often after work, helped David eat, gave him his medicine, and even made him laugh again. The children came on weekends, filling the house with laughter once more. David worked hard during his therapy. He cried through the pain, but never gave up because every time he looked up, Margaret was there smiling and cheering him on. "Come on, David," she said one afternoon. "You can do it. One more step." And for the first time since the accident, David managed to move his legs a little. Everyone clapped joyfully. Margaret's eyes shone with happiness. "See, I told you. God still has plans for you." David smiled weakly. "And this time I won't waste it." He looked at her deeply. "Margaret, you're the real blessing I never valued. You taught me what true love means, and I'll never forget it." She smiled softly. "And you taught me that forgiveness is stronger than pain." As months passed, David slowly learned to walk again with a walking stick. He and Margaret rebuilt a quiet friendship based on peace and respect. The children were happy again, and even Jonathan smiled whenever he visited. One cool evening, David sat outside with Margaret and said quietly, "You know, I used to think love was about beauty and appearance. But now I know love is about the heart that stands by you when everyone else walks away." Margaret nodded gently. "And I've learned that forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It makes you free." They both smiled at each other as the golden sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. David whispered, "Thank you, Margaret, for everything." She smiled softly. "Thank God, not me." And as the evening breeze blew across the compound, it carried away the pain of the past, leaving behind peace, forgiveness, and a love that found healing again. Pride can destroy what love has built. Never forget the people who stood by you when you had nothing. True beauty is not in body or appearance, but in the heart that loves you sincerely. Forgiveness heals deeper wounds than revenge ever can. A story of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Thank you for reading. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're reading from. We'd love to hear from you. Please don't forget to share this story with others who might need to hear this message of hope and redemption.